Okay, I have some bad news and I have some good news. The bad news is you are probably using your Instagram stories wrong, but the good news is that I'm going to help you. In today's video, I'm talking all things Instagram stories, specifically the mistakes that you're probably making on Instagram stories, how to stop making them, and I'm even going to tell you about a bunch of new and secret Instagram story features. Let's get to it. Okay, let's start at the most important part, right? What are your Instagram stories for? What is the purpose of your Instagram stories? How should you be using them? I know a lot of people don't know the answer to this question, so I'm just gonna give it to you straight, right? Your Instagram stories are not supposed to be used the same way as any other feature on Instagram. The type of content that you post on your feed, the type of content you produce for your reels should be different to the type of content you produce for your stories. The main purpose of your stories is to humanize your brand. It's to bring people behind the scenes so people can get to know you or your brand or your business on a deeper level. That is the beautiful thing about Instagram stories. They do not need to be anywhere near as polished as your other content needs to be. This is a place for you to be yourself, to show who you truly are, and to bring people behind the scenes so that they can get to know you on a deeper level. And that is why Instagram stories have so many different features which allow you to do that. That's why they have stickers which allow people to engage with your content. That's why you're able to upload photos in addition to videos. That's why they increase the length of your videos and stories to 60 seconds per frame now. So now you can upload a whole 1-minute video to your stories, which you previously wasn't able to. So that is the purpose of your stories. And that really nicely leads me into the mistakes that a lot of us are making with our stories. I say us because I make this mistake sometimes as well. You know, your girl isn't perfect. No one is. Okay, let's start with the most common mistakes. This one is very common, but also slightly difficult to explain, so keep with me. Stories without any context. Now, what I'm referring to here, and I'm sure you've probably done this because I have as well, is when you just post a bunch of random content from your day on stories, and at no point do you provide any context as to where you are, what you're doing, why you're doing any of those things. So when someone is tapping for your story and trying to basically live vicariously through you and just see what you get up to, sometimes when you don't add any context, it can be really difficult for anyone to find that engaging. And when I say add context, this can come in a couple of different forms. Maybe there's a piece to camera where you're speaking to the camera and talking about what you're doing that day. Maybe you've written a sentence or two explaining where you are and why you're there. It doesn't have to be a lot of work, but for most people, context is needed. Now, obviously there I said most people, because for some people, they can just share some really aesthetic photos and videos on their stories with zero context and it doesn't need it. For most of us mere mortals though, I want you to think about your audience when they're tapping through your story and just ask yourself this question. If I was my audience, would I understand what on earth is going on? Would I understand? Because if the answer is yes, you don't need to add context. If the answer is no, you probably need to add a bit of context on at least one of those stories. The next mistake, and one that I am definitely guilty of, is not using a good mixture of media on your stories. As I mentioned before, you can upload photos or videos to your stories. Use that. Some of us are naturally more inclined to share more photos than videos or vice versa, and that's okay. But try and include a mixture because it makes the viewing experience more interesting for your audience. Also, and this is a pro tip, and this is one that I need to listen to. If you are naturally inclined to want to get your camera and just film yourself talking and whack that up as a story, do it 100%. Be careful when that's the only thing you do, because now you're basically creating a YouTube video. Like if you've got 8 60-minute videos of you speaking to your camera, it's basically a YouTube video. And when people open up their Instagram and their browsing stories, they're not in the headspace where they want to sit down with a cup of tea and watch your story for 8 minutes. They're just not there.
Ain't nobody got time for that.
So you still want to keep it quick. You want to keep the pace up. And if you're going to speak to the camera and just rant like I do a lot, that's totally fine. But don't make that every single story. Another mistake that you might be making, and I talk about this one all the time because it bothers me, is uploading stories every single day because you think that you have to. So your heart's not in it, you're just doing it for the sake of it. This will lead to you uploading absolute nonsense on a regular basis. Not everyone has stuff to share every day. That's okay, all right? I personally believe that you should share content to your stories when you want to share content to your stories. As a minimum, aim to be active on your stories 2 days out of the week. Is it better for you to be active every day? Of course it is. But if you force it without actually having content that you want to share, you'll end up just sharing old content or other people's content. And that's fine to do every now and again, but not every single day. What then happens is that when someone sees your story pop up, they don't click on it because they know there's nothing original on there. They know it's just going to be a bunch of reposts posted content, so they just don't end up clicking. And I always say that once you lose a story viewer, once you lose someone who previously watched your stories and now they don't, it is almost impossible to get them back because your story will be hidden on their homepage. They'll have to scroll for 5 years just to find it, okay? So keep that in mind. All right, couple more mistakes before we move on to some of the new features coming to your Instagram stories. This next mistake has two sides to it. So on one side, it's uploading too much content on your stories, and the other side is never letting your stories die out. This is for you prolific story sharers out there. We love you, we do. However, uploading 50 stories in one day isn't the best move. Most people aren't going to stick with your stories until the end of that day, unless you've just gotten married or you're doing something incredibly exciting, in which case you could probably get away with it. But as standard procedure, you don't really want to be pushing the 15+ mark on your story content. And that links perfectly with the whole concept of letting your stories die out. This is a really powerful thing for you to do if you're struggling with your story views. If you get in the habit of just letting your stories die out every now and again, so there's no active stories there, and then posting fresh, you'll notice that you'll start to get more views on your story content because you're not just adding to the stream of content that's already there. Basically see it as like a refresh. If your stories die, then you start posting again. It's like Instagram's algorithm looks at you with a brand new light and they're like, oh my God, hi.
Hello there.
Let's get your story up there. Let's get people seeing your story again, you know? Last mistake before we move on, and this should have been at the top because this is very common. This mistake is thinking that your life is too boring to upload content on your stories. I'm here to tell you something, right? People find comfort in the mundane. And I know that sounds like I'm basically saying your life is boring. That's not what I'm saying. Mundane and boring, they're different words, right? What I'm basically saying is that whilst you might think that your days are monotonous or they don't have much excitement to them, other people like to view that. A lot of the time when you're watching a person's story, you're doing it because you want to immerse yourself in someone else's life. It doesn't matter if you're not Beyonce and you're not like bringing your phone on stage as you tour in front of millions of people, right? It could just be that you're sharing content from your day and you're talking about the good things that happened, the bad things that happened, a TV show that you've watched recently that you love. Like, people love to consume that. And if you don't believe me, I want you to think about the stories that you like to consume, because I'm willing to bet that a lot of them are from people who might consider their lives to be boring. All right, let me stop lecturing you all and let's talk about some of the new features coming to your stories. And I want to talk about this because using new Instagram features can often result in you getting a bit of a kick by the algorithm, as in like a good kick. Is there such a thing? Like a positive kick. The algorithm can sometimes reward you for using new features. That's one reason. But another reason is because there are so many new features being released to Instagram all the time. I mean, I literally just filmed a whole video on this. I'll link to it up here. That actually it means that a lot of the time we're not using anything correctly because there are so many new features that we just simply didn't know about. So let's kick off with the first Instagram story feature. So this feature is already live and it basically allows you to highlight a specific comment that you've received from your feed content. So your reels or your carousels or your photos, a comment from there, you can highlight it in a story post. I'm actually going to read word for word what Instagram said about this. Sometimes all it takes is a single comment to spark an idea or start meaningful conversations with your fans. You can now easily share your favorite comments to stories, highlighting your most important interactions with your audience. So basically, that's a longer way of saying that you can use your comments from your content to spark an Instagram story idea, maybe even start a conversation, definitely drive some engagement. So if you're sitting there right now thinking, oh, I should probably upload something to my story later today, but you don't know what to share, head to your comments. I'm hoping that everyone has this feature, but you know what Instagram's like, they roll it out weirdly. Go to your comments because you might have a feature which will allow you to highlight that comment as a story and that will give you your content idea. This next feature I think is really interesting. It's called the secret sticker. Now, this one is in testing, but essentially it would allow you to write a message that is only visible by people who respond to your secret story sticker. So you could use a sticker and be like, guys, I'm about to launch a product. Respond to this with the word yes if you want to know what the product is. And then anyone who responds to that sticker will then get to see what the product is and therefore what the secret was. I think this is a really interesting update. I think it'll be great for engagement, especially for brands. If you want to steal my idea for what I just said for a new product launch, go ahead because I think it's a great one. Another sticker update is that soon we will all be able to link to an external application in our stories. At the minute, we can only use like a URL link, but soon you'll be able to actually link another app. So this is great for fashion creators who want to link, maybe they like to know it or something along those lines. This will really help you out. For everyone else, maybe not that exciting. There's also another feature called the music picker, which will allow your audience to share their top songs with you at that current moment. I don't know, that one seems a bit lackluster, but I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't tell you about it. These last two, I'm not gonna lie, are my least favorite. One is in testing. It's basically a feature which allows you to see content from those of you who are nearby. So apparently this is something that is already thriving on TikTok, especially in China, but I haven't seen this be tested on any other social media site in the UK yet. So let me know in the comments if you've experienced any feature like this before. But essentially, as I said, it will allow you to see content from people who are near you. That makes me feel uncomfortable.
I don't like it.
Can you let me know if I'm just by myself there? It makes me feel a bit uncomfortable. I don't know if I'm being silly. Yeah, let me know in the comments what you think about that one. Last but not least, and this one is hot off the press. Like, I've not seen any articles about this. I only know about this because I seem to be one of the lucky few who've received the test of this feature. So this is basically a discovery feature for stories. So you'll see from my screenshot on the screen, I logged into one of my Instagram accounts, and at the top, I noticed that I didn't recognize any of those creators. I didn't recognize them because I don't follow them. And if I clicked on them, I was able to follow them and watch their stories. I do not like this feature.
I don't like it.
I think your Instagram stories should remain one of those features that only allow you to interact with your friends and family and people who you're following. I do not think having a discovery feature on your stories is going to work. I have no reason to want to follow these people just because I can see their profile photo. I need more context, but also I do think people will respond negatively to it. So if you are someone who works at Instagram, who for some reason is watching this video, hello, hit me up. I'd love to have a conversation with you. And you're gathering some feedback. That's my thoughts. I'm not a fan. Okay, guys, I hope you found that video useful. Please let me know in the comments what you thought about those new updates. If you feel like hanging around, I recommend watching this video. It's all about the good, the bad, and the ugly of growing on social media. I actually think it's one of the most important videos that I've ever filmed. So I recommend you watch it. Thank you so much for watching as always. I'll see you in my next video.